Shalom, welcome to the Adat Yeshua Counting the Omer Rabbi's blog. Today is day 14 and we're back in the office again for our new blog for today. Some new thoughts and ideas as we're counting through. I'm waiting for Shavuot to come. We're not that far in yet. We've still got many days to go, but some more thoughts and ideas around. And I want to kick off today with a thought from the letter written to the Jewish community in Ephesus. And it comes from chapter 5 and starting at verse 8 down to 10. And it says this, "For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. So therefore walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is goodness, righteousness, and truth, proving what is acceptable to the Lord," proving or judging or discerning what is acceptable to the Lord. It's a fantastic little structure that's going on here, but it actually, for me, throws open a huge can of worms. Proving what is righteous, proving what is acceptable to the Lord. How do we discern this? How do we judge this? How do we make sense of what is right in that way? What is really pleasing to God? You know, before we were lost in darkness, that's it. We were just walking in our own imaginations of our hearts, doing whatever we wanted to do. But now, says Rav Shaul, we've got to walk in such a way, discerning, proving and knowing what is acceptable and pleasing to God. You know, I think it is certainly true we all want to please God. I mean, if you were to ask anyone, do you want to please God or do you want to annoy God? No one's going to say they want to annoy God. Everyone wants to please God. The question is how? How do we do this? How do we discern it? How do we judge what is acceptable and pleasing to God? And it comes up to an interesting thought in my head that actually we spend most of our lives in one form or another trying to please people, don't we? You know, as a young child, we're forever seeking to please our parents, probably mostly our fathers, but also mums as well, our carers who look after us, those who are really close to us at that stage. We learn early for peace in our lives, to be successful, to be accepted, to be approved in this way, to find that approval, and therefore to know that we are loved, means to know what it is to please the people in authority around us. And that begins with our parents, chiefly. But it doesn't stop there, does it? It goes on to school. We then learn again, we get into a school scenario. The way to succeed, the way to be accepted, to have approval in school is to stick to the rules, to do as you're told, to learn this, do that, make sure your homework's in on time. All the way through our school time, the same thing, acceptance based on keeping the rules. Those in authority tell us, we do it, we're accepted, we're loved, we're approved, we move on. Striving to get it right according to a rule-based system takes us to acceptance. But I want to argue that it does no more than that. It may take us to acceptance, but does it take us to a place where we're loved, that we know we're loved? Is love from someone who is higher up in authority than us, is a definition of love just knowing that we've kept the commandments, kept the rules, the rule-based system? That'd be pretty bad, wouldn't it really? Imagine you're married, your husband or your wife, and you look at your tick list of things. Okay, I have done all 15 things on this list today, therefore my wife or my husband should know that I love her. That isn't love. No one can argue that's love. It's got to be way more than that, isn't it? There's something deeper going on in all of this. And yet the way we've learned that acceptance and approval is received is by being obedient to a rule-based system. It runs all the way through our societies, from our families, all the way through. And the problem is that we can transpose that onto our commandments. That's what we've learned. Keep the commandments, God will love you. And yet the scriptures don't really say that. God's love for human beings pre-existed the Torah, pre-existed the sets of commandments which he's handed down. But it gets even more oblique than this in many ways, is that, you know, we read from our rabbinic traditions of the commandments, you know, it's not in heaven. Torah is not in heaven, said the rabbis. In other words, it's ours. We can do what we want with it. We can form this and shape this and make it malleable. We are in control of the definition of righteousness and justice and mercy and the commandments. We have that. It's been delegated to human beings in our system, the rabbinic system, delegated to the rabbis. But here's the problem, I think, in all of this, that we're just human beings. If human beings have now got control of the righteousness of God in terms of definition, setting that rule-based system, and we are ourselves flawed and sinners, and who's to say that we're even getting it right? Who's to say that the interpretations of the commandments that we as rabbis are expecting others to keep, who's to say that even we are right? Because we're sinners too. We're just as corrupted in our minds, in our spirits, in our hearts, in our rebellion against God. Because honestly, there is not one, there is no one who is that holy and righteous and perfect before God. No, there is not one. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, as Rav Shaul and King Shlomo said thousands of years ago. Who knows if we're getting it right? It takes us to a really difficult situation. How can we know that we're complying with the righteous standards of God? How can we therefore know that we are accepted to God, that we're approved by God? Dare I say it, how do we even know that we are loved by God in that way? And the answer comes back. It's a good Jewish answer. That's got nothing to do with the commandments, actually, at the end of the day. To understand approval, acceptance by God, you have to go back to Avraham Avinu. How do we know this? Because the Lord put him into a deep sleep. And this is because he cut a covenant with Abraham, he cut a covenant with him. Because Abraham had a quality. It wasn't so much obedience. The obedience that Abraham showed came as a result of this quality. And what was that quality? Faith. He left family, home, background, language, everything. He moved out to go to a land. He had no idea where he was going. God led him day by day. It was a journey of faith every single step of the way. He trusted God would bring him to the conclusion of his life and that God would be faithful to the promises and the words that he'd given him. He had a total life of faith. It wasn't dependent upon ticking boxes of getting it right and compliance. No, it had nothing to do with that. And because Abraham had faith, the scriptures say God credited to his account righteousness. Incredible. Abraham did nothing. He was asleep and God credited it to him. See, most people, when they hear this credited to his account as righteousness, they hear in the book of Hebrews and elsewhere in the Messianic writings that Rav Shaul talks about this, and everyone assumes it was the Christians or the church that invented this, that Christianity somehow invented this being credited righteousness from God direct into us, that we don't have to do anything for that compliance. It's not a Christian concept. It's not a church concept. It's not something that was invented in the Messianic writings. This is Jewish. It's Jewish because it happened to Avraham Avinu, the progenitor of the Jewish people, the father that we look back to, who set the whole Israelite, Hebrew, Jewish endeavor in motion. It begins with him. And the crediting happened when he had faith. He didn't have to do anything because his faith, and now he recognized in his spirit when he wakes up from that, he recognizes through faith, God has accepted him. He's approved. He's loved, and not because of a tick list. He's experiencing God's love and acceptance and approval. He's not now running around striving to get it right on a rule-based system in any way, shape or form. He just knows it to be true. He experiences it to be true every single day of his life. As Messianic Jews, we understand that we have received that love of God in that way, that it's credited to us through our own faith in what he has done for us through salvation in Messiah Yeshua. That is where we stand. If you are striving for approval with God, if you're striving for that acceptance with God, and in the back of your mind, you're never quite sure, am I accepted? Am I approved? Am I loved? I want to just say to you, it's very simple. Follow the example of Avraham Avinu. Follow Abraham's example. Step out in faith. Trust in faith. Say right now to God, I trust you. I have faith in you for what you are able to do through me and in me in my life. And step out in faith today. Amen. Thank you for listening.